think it's good to follow
no,
up.
I'm happy. I'm happy. And there's this, if you actually, now that you mentioned that, that part of the song, I don't know if Robert can, he's normally the one who does the humming well. There's that part when he sings and says, like, Mufumbi dakati konga kabala, chana yani, you know, kunuguna. Nuguna. Yadenga wa kugenda ngo kusura yeremye.
Mwana wa abantu.
Yeah. Now you know what we miss. So
a lot.
You listen to the song and every sentence meant so much. If you listen to one like Viola, I think it was just today who first had that remix.
And it did wonders for him.
And it did wonders for him. Katiebula yo mweze ibuzo mbitule kansubira okubita gamba Viola abalungi mbalaba naye neekuumiddegwe. You know, these guys would sing and take you into like you're watching a movie. You know, because they create something in your mind. Not these days where you just have to jump around and dance.
It's a love.
Then after they ask you, what was the message? Mbada. What was the meaning? Chiwani.
It's a huge love story that, of course, him telling it, you will feel like no wonder Felix was, considering, comparing it with the Celine Dion's. It's some kind of story that you would want to listen to, and of course, does touch everyone. And well, that is really good music. But also, Felix and Robert, there is something across the country, and of course, I was concerned. Now, Uganda could stand a chance of being blacklisted by 3rd September if they do not pass the 7 bills related to financial crimes. Of course, talking about the money laundering and, of course, the anti-terrorism bill. Now, it looks like Parliament will have to actually pass those bills and also look more into that. The Speaker of Parliament actually gave, that is the Deputy Speaker, Thomas Taebwa, did give Parliament up to Monday to come out with any information they have on these bills before they are passed, because we are looking at that stand, and of course that adds to the work that Parliament is doing towards making sure that we are also in the same spirit with the rest of Africa and the rest of the world, especially when it comes to financial crimes. And for me, I found this really, really interesting. Felix, I don't know what you think about this move from Parliament.
Well, one, we don't make law. I don't think a country should make law basing on a pressure or decisiveness that is external, because it does definitely work against our sovereignty directly. Nevertheless, there's need to address such kind of crimes internationally, because they do abuse and jeopardize, one, security of nations and, of course, continental peace, as a matter of fact. But nevertheless, I think Uganda should majorly focus on bills or perhaps laws that do matter most to Ugandans. For me, that's my take. You know, international communities are key, but nevertheless, laws should be made not by far to implement the desires and whims of international institutions, but rather what is the desire of nationals and what is at the heart of the same. I believe you don't box in a country like Uganda on such kind of laws.
Well, the repercussions when Honorable Tayewa was speaking to Parliament, where he said, even if it means working almost at night, Parliament can sit because they're so critical. He mentions the impact if we don't.
They have just known it.
He said that if other organizations or concerned parties have delayed, he said let Parliament not delay. It's not a time of casting blame. It is a time of saving a situation. Those have been before
Parliament for the last, by the way, 7 years.
It's a time to save a situation. And
that's the whole thing.
They must save a situation. Otherwise, if Ugandans find it hard to send money abroad or even receive money abroad because we do not fulfill certain requirements, there's going to be disaster. Even the aid and all that they're supposed to be getting.
It's just being overblown.
Clearly, it is a time that Ugandans are alert, but of course also a huge sign for Parliament, because they now have to work overtime towards this. But also talking about Parliament, it looks like the first quarter of the budget release is out, and it looks like there is an under-release. And of course, you now have, at the same time, you have authorities like UNRWA that are coming up to say, even this financial year, they are carrying on with the date. audit of about 528 billion Uganda shillings that was carried on from the financial year 2020 and 2021. And they're looking at the fact that even the release that has come out this financial year is not enough for them to actually have all the projects. So they will have to cut down on some of the projects. We do know that some sectors have not been affected by this its budget release, especially looking at defense. You look at some of the State House, some of the sensitive departments that have not been affected, but a lot looks like we could be again missing out on a lot of strategic plans that were made by different organizations towards this financial year. And I think that sparked my attention, Robert.
Well, for me, I know that the budget is your expected revenue and planned expenditure. So government can only look at, you can only cut a coat according to your cloth. So we know 2 years of COVID-19 globally, there are very big challenges in terms of money is scarce. So we can't expect that if the entire world was hit, where industries were down, where even here we had almost 2 years of lockdown. So it is just self-explanatory why government would be struggling to meet its financial obligations. However, my biggest question here comes, are we getting our priorities right?
Yeah.
If you have monies are not enough, so which ministries are you cutting? Which ministry are you not cutting? When you come out and say we've released money for this quarter, maybe people would want to know, okay, the budget you've left, areas you've not touched, are they the priority? Are they the best, most necessity to Ugandans, so that you ensure they have full budget, and those that you've neglected, those that you've slashed their budget? Well, so I think that is where the question is. But about government having challenges, it is self-explanatory, I want to believe.
Well, that, and of course the fact that the country right now is very aggressive, especially when it comes to keeping the inflation rate to just a minimum. And of course it poses a question of how most of these ministries are going to be using the monies that are being released towards their strategic plans that they did submit towards the financial year. That and more, we do have a lot happening across the country and of course beyond borders, but we will be starting off with some of the local stories that have made it to the news desk. Robert.
Very interesting is a story about school fees. 9th or 6th of next month, children will be reporting back to school. Now what is interesting, the minister and the ministry have warned schools against increasing tuition. Government has warned schools against increasing school fees without approval from the Ministry of Education. Government Chief Whip Hamza Mubua said Ministry of Education is drafting a statutory instrument on school fees, a guidance schools should follow before effecting any increment. This warning comes following an outcry of members of parliament who have expressed concern over school fees increment by both private and government-aided schools. As soon as the Deputy Speaker, Thomas Tayewa, slated in his seat to chair the Wednesday afternoon parliamentary session, matters of national concern came in. One of them was the increase in school fees by both private and government-aided schools. In his submission, Parliamentary Commissioner Solomon Serrani pleaded with government to prevail over school proprietors. It was at this point that Government Chief Whip Somba took it to the floor and seriously warned school owners against increasing school fees or tuition.
Now still in local stories, the Parliamentary Committee on Commissions, Statutory Authorities and State Enterprise is to seek guidance from the Speaker of Parliament on how it should proceed with the investigations into the Uganda airlines. Now the COSASI chairperson, Joel Senyonyi, cites invisible hands in interfering with the investigation, and the same is where that does endanger the progress with the matter. Now this follows the COSASI committee describes as a foul play after the Chief Executive Officer of the Uganda Airlines, Jennifer Bamuturachi, snubbed the committee's proceedings for the second time.
And the three ministries in Natural Resources Management and Conservation have signed a memorandum of understanding pleading to collaboration in fostering top-notch management of the Greater Virunga landscape. The Executive Secretary, Greater Virunga Transboundary Corporation Secretariat, Dr. Andrew Seguya, is optimistic that with a memorandum of understanding in place, Uganda will henceforth have one voice at the regional level, thereby harmonizing efforts for proper operations in the Greater Virunga landscape. A resource shared amongst the three countries of Rwanda, Democratic Republic of Congo, and Uganda.
Now, the National Environment Management Authority, working with security agencies, has evicted encroachers in the Rubiji wetland in Wakiso district on the second day of the exercise. Now, they evicted those operating in Busega Tax Park, food kiosks and others as the morning breeze gilded through Rubiji wetland in Rubaga division of Kampala yesterday. The environment law enforcement officers led by Uganda People's Defence Forces and police personnel, as well as officials from the National Environment Management Authority, descended onto the wetland. Now, armed with guns, hose, sticks and machetes, pangas, the officials embarked on enforcing an order to evict encroachers from the degraded wetland.
Now crossing over onto the international scene, Texas school shooting. Now, Uvalde police chief fired for botched response to school shooting. A police chief accused of botching the response to the fatal shooting in May of 19 school children and 2 teachers in Uvalde, Texas, has been sacked. The local school board voted unanimously on Wednesday evening to fire Pete Arredondo. His lawyers said in a written statement that they had been unaware of anyone was inside the classroom with the shooter. Mr. Arredondo has previously argued that he did not think he was the officer in charge at the time of the attack. He had taken the brunt of criticism for the officer's 77-minute delay in confronting the teenage gunman and is the first officer to be dismissed. According to the New York Times, cheering was heard in the room as one of the board members filed the motion that was a good cause to remove Mr. Arredondo from his post immediately. Mr. Arredondo's lawyers called his firing an unconstitutional public launching. In a statement reported by Austin American Statesman newspaper, his attorneys maintained Chief Arredondo did the right thing. Any allegations of attack of leadership is wholly misplaced. The complaint that an officer should have rushed the door believed to be locked and to open it up without a shield capable of shooting an AR-15 bullet without breaching tools is a tantamount to suicide. In another story, Kobe Bryant's widow has been awarded $16 million after the leaked crash photos payout. Kobe Bryant's widow has been awarded $16 million in damages over leaked graphic photos of the helicopter crash that killed the U.S. basketball star and his daughter in 2020. Vanessa Bryant, 40, said that she had panic attacks after leaking images taken by Los Angeles County Sheriff's deputies and firefighters had been shared. A federal jury now said the county must pay Mrs. Bryant for emotional distress. Co-plaintiff Christopher Chester will be paid $15 million and Mrs. Bryant's husband Kobe Bryant, 41, and daughter Gianna, 13, and the 6 family friends died when their helicopter crashed in California in January 2020. Mr. Chester lost his wife Sarah and daughter Peyton in the similar crash. A report by Los Angeles Times claiming county's employees took photos at the crash site and shared them with others that has enraged the victims' families. Last November, the county agreed to pay $2.5 million over emotional distress caused to the 2 families who lost relatives in the crash. Now, a federal lawsuit was made alongside Chris Chester, who lost his wife Sarah and daughter Peyton in the crash. Sobbing on the witness stand last week, Mrs. Bryant recalled being at home with her other children when she read the LA Times story. I bolted out on the house and I ran to the side of the house so the girls couldn't see me. I want to run down the block and just scream, she said in the statement.
Well, now back into Africa, vote counting begins in tight Angola election race. Now ballot counting has begun in Angola and after polls are closed in what was widely seen as the most competitive vote in the country. Now democratic history, with incumbent President João Lourenço squaring up against the charismatic opposition leader Adalberto Costa Jr. The People's Movement for the Liberation of Angola, which has ruled the oil-rich nation for nearly 5 decades faced its most serious challenge since the first multi-party vote in 1992.
Climate change in Africa, how more children will die from hot weather. Now, climate change has already increased global temperatures, greatly increasing extremes. This will continue unless greenhouse gas emissions are reduced to net zero. The 1.5 degrees Celsius target of the Paris Agreement requires emissions reduction of around 50% in the next 10 years. Now, newborn babies are particularly vulnerable to the high temperatures, and they have a limited ability to thermoregulate or control their bodies and the temperatures that can easily become dangerously hot or cold. Older babies and toddlers can thermoregulate better, but they are often unable to communicate their temperature discomfort. Now they rely on the caregivers to help them adjust clothing and change their environment, like opening a window or seeking shade. Africa has some of the poorest and hottest countries in the world. This means that young African children are at particular risk of heat stress impacts. However, estimates of heat-related death in African children are limited, primarily due to the lack of available mortality data over the continent. Now, there has been little research in the impact of climate change on child heat-related death in any region of the world, but to address this knowledge gap, we estimate that present-day and future heat-related mortalities due to climate change in Africa, in African children under 5 years, could be looked at in more research. Well, it looks like there is more and more each day there is research reports that come out, and of course looking at this threat towards African children. We do know that most of the African countries are vulnerable even to all these effects of climate change like we already see, but when it comes to children now, it will be really a great danger that is posed for the continent. But we also talking about our health. Robert, you're holding very beautiful bottles right there. You can tell us more about those.
The weekend is almost around the corner. And of course, I know people want to party, people want to drink, what is not very important or beneficial to their bodies. Now, hallelujah, banana juice and hallelujah, ginger tea plus hallelujah, tamarind drink are here for you at just 1,500. These, what they do apart from being tasty, they also boost your immune system. So ensure every day you take at least one of these products, and I want to guarantee you, you will see the results as time goes by. You will see how much you're saving, where even your doctors will wonder if you're in the country or not, just because you are not falling sick, so you don't have visits there.
Well, there you have it. You now know what to do to keep yourself healthy, and of course these are some of the products that we do recommend for you every morning. But also later than this, we'll be going into our newsreel, and of course we want to look more into the education system within this country. We know that it is post-COVID, and of course there are a lot of changes, especially with the curriculum. So we want to talk more about that, and of course we'll be also involving you in our conversation. But for now, we want to take you through the inspiration song of the day to just kickstart your day, and of course you give you that much needed inspiration as you wake up to head for your work. We'll take a break and we'll be back with our newsreel.
Well, Mollen, just before we get into the remember?
Yes.
And how we celebrate in his life this week?
Yeah.
Probably it will be a good time for us to give a song to our viewers of the greatest Eli Shama Wamala.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. Well, now you know what we miss. So
a lot.
You listen to the song and every sentence meant so much. If you listen to one like Viola, I think it was just today who first had that remix,
and it did wonders for him.
And it did wonders for him. Kati ebulayo mwezi ibuzo mbitule kansubira okubita gamba Viola abalungi mbalaba naye neekuumidde ggwe. You know, these guys would sing and take you into like you're watching a movie. You know, because they create something in your mind. Not these days where you just have to jump around and
it's a love.
then after they ask you what was the message, mbada What was the meaning? Chiwani?
It's a huge love story that, of course, him telling it, you will feel like no wonder Felix was, considering it, comparing it with the Celine Dion's. It's some kind of story that you would want to listen to, and of course, does touch everyone. And well, that is really good music. But also, Felix and Robert, there is something across the country, and of course, I was concerned. Now, Uganda could stand a chance of being blacklisted by 3rd September if they do not pass the 7 bills related to financial crimes. Of course, talking about the money laundering and, of course, the anti-terrorism bill. Now, it looks like Parliament will have to actually pass those bills and also look more into that. The Speaker of Parliament actually gave, that is the Deputy Speaker, Thomas Taebwa, did give Parliament up to Monday to come out with any information they have on these bills before they are passed, because we are looking at that stand, and of course that adds to the work that Parliament is doing towards making sure that we are also in the same spirit with the rest of Africa and the rest of the world, especially when it comes to financial crimes. And for me, I found this really, really interesting. Felix, I don't know what you think about this move from Parliament.
Well, one, we don't make law. I don't think a country should make law basing on a pressure or decisiveness that is external, because it does definitely work against our sovereignty directly. Nevertheless, there is need to address such kind of crimes internationally, because they do abuse and jeopardize, one, security of nations and, of course, continental peace as a matter of fact. But nevertheless, I think Uganda should majorly focus on bills or perhaps laws that do matter most to Ugandans. For me, that's my take. International communities are key, but nevertheless, laws should be made not by far to implement the desires and whims of international institutions, but rather what is the desire of nationals and what is at the heart of the same. I believe you don't box in a country like Uganda on such kind of laws.
Well, the repercussions when Honorable Tayewa was speaking to Parliament, where he said, even if it means working almost at night, Parliament can sit because they're so critical. He mentions the impact if we don't.
They have just known it.
He said that if other organizations or concerned parties have delayed, he said let Parliament not delay. It's not a time of casting blame. It is a time of saving a situation.
Those have been before Parliament for the last, by the way, 7 years.
It's a time to save a situation. And
that's the whole thing.
They must save a situation. Otherwise, if Ugandans find it hard to send money abroad or even receive money abroad because we do not fulfill certain requirements, there's going to be disaster. To us, even the aid and all that they're supposed to be getting.
It's just being overblown.
Clearly, it is a time that Ugandans are alert, but of course also a huge sign for Parliament, because they now have to work overtime towards this. But also talking about Parliament, it looks like the first quarter of the budget release is out, and it looks like there is an under-release. And of course, you now have, at the same time, you have authorities like UNRWA that are coming up to say, even this financial year, they are carrying on with a date of about 528 billion Uganda shillings that was carried on from the financial year 2020 and 2021. And they're looking at the fact that even the release that has come out this financial year is not enough for them to actually have all the projects. So they will have to cut down on some of the projects. We do know that some sectors have not been affected by this cuts budget release, especially looking at defense. You look at some of the State House, some of the sensitive departments that have not been affected, but a lot looks like we could be again missing out on a lot of strategic plans that were made by different organizations towards this financial year. And I think that sparked my attention, Robert.
Well, for me, I know that the budget is your expected revenue and planned expenditure. So government can only look at, you can only cut a coat according to your cloth. So we know 2 years of COVID-19 globally, there are very big challenges in terms of monies are scarce. So we can't expect that if the entire world was hit, where industries were down, where even here we had almost 2 years of lockdown. So it is just self-explanatory why government would be struggling to meet its financial obligations. However, my biggest question here comes, are we getting our priorities right?
Yeah.
If you have monies are not enough, so which ministries are you cutting? Which ministry are you not cutting? When you come out and say we've released money for this quarter, maybe people would want to know, okay, the budget you've left, areas you've not touched, are they the priority? Are they the best, most necessity to Ugandans, so that you ensure they have full budget, and those that you've those that you've slashed their budget? Well, so I think that is where the question is. But about government having challenges, it is self-explanatory, I want to believe.
Well, that, and of course the fact that the country right now is very aggressive, especially when it comes to keeping the inflation rate to just a minimum. And of course it poses a question of how most of these ministries are going to be using the monies that are being released towards their strategic plans that they did submit towards the financial year. That and more, we do have a lot happening across the country and of course beyond borders, but we will be starting off with some of the local stories that have made it to the news desk. Robert.
Very interesting is a story about school fees. 9th or 6th of next month, children will be reporting back to school. Now what is interesting, the minister and the ministry have warned
Stay on UBC.
If I'm looking at issues of taxation and all that, I will definitely run for the Kateshumbas. Okay?
Okay.
If I look at, if I'm looking at issues of investments and what, I would definitely run. I would definitely run for Dr. Emure Kugonza and Honorable Omara. Okay. If I'm looking at issues of the law, I will run for our very, very own people. I have the Oboso Bosses, I have the Katuntus, I have the Robin Arwapojos. So everyone is talented in one way or another.
Did you mention Katuntu?
Okay. Yes.
Is he yours?
Yes, he is.
Yours as in NRM?
He is.
Was brought to you by.
Simply make a small deposit of 99k and pay the balance mpola. You can pay in daily, weekly or even monthly installments while you enjoy your new phone. So what are you doing today? Visit any MTN shop near you and get the MTN cupboard super easy.
Forget last season. Forget the oohs and ahs. Forget every moment that stole the show. Because the real show is here on GoTV. It's the new season. It's action-packed and it's going to be non-stop football. With over 1,000 games from more than 7 leagues and cup competitions plus a World Cup. Make sure you get the best seat in the house this new football season. Get a GoCoder with 1 month of GoTV value for only 25,000 Uganda shillings and enjoy non-stop football. GoTV Uganda. Love it.
Enjoy more GBs for the same price on Airtel. Kirabo using to Gabane. We have increased GBs across all your favorite packs. Now, 4 GB is at 10,000 shillings and 10.5 GB at 22,500 shillings, all valid for a week. For the heavy data users, enjoy 24 GB at 50,000 shillings and 50 GB at 100,000 shillings, all valid for a month. Dial *175# or use the My Airtel app to buy these and more affordable weekly and monthly data bundles on Airtel, the smartphone network.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda.
Well, there you have it, songs of Ronald Mayinja, and of course we're still paying tribute to Eli Wamala, taking you back to the good old days. Well, we want to move forward towards today's discussion. This morning we want to look into the education system and of course look into the assessment, especially now that we're talking about a post-COVID time where there has been a lot of changes, especially when it comes to the curriculum. And of course the assessment will have to take in many forms, right from the primary living examination to the Uganda Certificate of Education examination and of course the UACE. And of course that will be a very complex and interconnected web of all forms of assessment. Also, this is rooting from the fact that President Yoweri Museveni did express his dissatisfaction with the current education system, saying that it could frustrate the socio-economic development of this country, and that is where we also want to take it on. We do know that there have been reports coming in from the Ministry of Education and of course some of the initiatives that have been done, especially when it comes to assessment, but also making sure that we have the practical knowledge. You look into the classroom formal education, the informal education, Is it beneficial? Are we taking the right procedures that even most of these initiatives have been held towards? And of course, that is where we also want to know how far has the education system gone. And of course, post-COVID, the new curriculum that was brought in, this is where I want to bring in Felix, the new curriculum that we are seeing. And some of the teachers actually did undergo training to be able to, you know, catch up with the current way of training. But we wonder whether this is what has been done. And of course, is it sustainable? Are they even making sure that the procedures that were given out by Ministry of Education are the ones that we're following? Yes.
Mollen, rightly put in your preamble, you did mention about education and its direct connection to socio-economic development.
Yes.
Perhaps that should be our beginning or spring place for us to help our viewers understand where is the relationship. Tell you what, other civilities, and I'll give you a number of countries just to mention but a few: the United States of America, the great then Britain, which does comprise of various entities, the Italy, the French, Germany. When you cross over into Asia, education has been used as a tool of appreciation of a country's vision. And that's why probably that informs the dissatisfaction of the president, most recent. And I don't know how long it had, by the way. It has taken long. It's been long overdue, because these discussions have been around for quite a time. Now, for any country that does want to discuss socio-economic development must accept to take the bitter pill to lodge a discussion into the nature and kind and mode of education. Why? If a country, for example, like Uganda, says, and up till today it's now a saying, that the backbone is agriculture, we have failed to prove that, because we are not even among the world's biggest supplier of food, for that matter. So, but we say, well, I don't know how many people eat coffee in the globally. I don't know if coffee is food. That is the argument. There's also been that argument. But if you're talking about being an agricultural background, we should be able to supply food, and with the potential we have, though. Yeah, but if you're talking about a country like Uganda having the backbone of agriculture, it means our education system, to make benefit of socio-economic muscle, should be tailored towards our greatest potential. But between you and me, go to an agricultural class in Makerere, in Nkozi, in Nkumba, probably YMCA, the UMIs, the Chambogos of this world. Tell me how many universities in this country have a bachelor's in agro-business or agro-marketing or agro-enter. How many? Let's be honest. Now, that defeats the purpose of a vision, national vision. And that's what the president is saying, that we need to make sense out of, because now it is like, it has become a life process. Every child in this country needs to go to school. It's no longer just a want, by the way. It's a need now. But the question is, how is the need relevant to socio-economic development? When you take our children as a father to school, what do they learn? That's what we are trying to address, or that's what I pick from the president's address, trying to address the dilemma of education. What do our children learn? Or ourselves, what do we learn when we go to school? How does that we learn transform a country like Uganda from where it is to a place where it desires to be? Are you teaching people the right things in relating to solving problems? For example, what are the problems of Uganda? If I ask just any of us here, we have challenges in healthcare, infrastructure development, innovation and technology. All these, does our education address our challenges? Does our education push our opportunities? What does our education do? Is it a rumor type of education, rumor monger type of education, that a kid will come out of school and all they can do is speak good, useless English? You know, tongue twisting. Hey, oh, my name is Nyonyintono, speaking in the nose and what. And then when you tell them, they tell you what? You go and wash your underwear. They can hardly wash their underwear. What I'm saying is, how valuable is our education? If the education has value, the socio-economic transformation or attributions will come by themselves. So this is the question we are dealing with when the president says, how do we cause sense of education as a system, by the way? From the beginning till what you want to call the end. Here, it is only in this country where you have jobless professors. What a shame.
Well, Felix does bring out a good point, especially with the value of our education. And of course, we do know that this is a mantle and actually a mandate by the Ministry of Education and Sports in this country to make sure that we have better assessment towards education. And of course, it should be one that is adding value to the children of Uganda as we move forward, because we have also over time seen the president insisting on us moving towards a scientific nation, the economy that can be self-reliant on the professionals that we have across the country. And that is where I also want Robert to come in. We have seen the Ministry of Education create a roadmap towards most of these improvements. But of course, that also brings in the factor that we never see the implementation coming, especially from even the roadmap they put across, describing many of the initiatives that have been put across. Is this really at the end of the day implemented in the schools? Are schools getting the right procedure from Ministry of Education, or is it failure at ministry level?
Well, first to understand properly our education system and the challenges, we must have a short snap into our background, our education background. Felix talked about these countries that have had education systems that are tailor-made for their visions. I want to take you back. Africa, and Uganda in particular, we had what we now call, what you refer to as informal education. And then the white man brought informal education. Informal education was addressing the problems at the moment. That when a young man is growing, he's told, Gendo, you go komaga. You get it? Because people were putting on back cloth.
To make back clothes.
So it was a must you learn how to make
commercial activity. Actually.
Yeah. So go learn how to hunt because you needed food. Any education system that doesn't address the problems of the moment is as good as useless. Informal education, that a woman, one day you're going to be a mother, you're going to be responsible. At a certain level, go to your aunties, learn this and this. So informal education, how to make mats, how to weave, that was education. Yeah. When the white man came into Uganda, he needed administrators. You see, our education system wasn't based on solving situations. It was based on helping our colonial masters rule and govern smoothly. That's why it created job seekers, not job creators. And that is where the problem started. That we were given what wasn't ours, and over a time what was ours went diminishing and perishing. Now, Ministry of Education has come up with initiatives that I want to appreciate that are aimed at bringing an education system that is aimed at addressing the challenges over time. That is why when you go to some countries, Asia, some of these countries, you find that even at home, there's what we call a cottage industry. The education system is result-oriented. What do you learn? How is it going to benefit? Right from nursery, right from all levels, categories, that they teach you to add value to solve a problem. Ours is to go through a system, then be a job seeker. So when Ministry of Education comes up now, for example, they have adopted, we are looking at the lower secondary curriculum, making education more practical. That yes, we remove what we used to call irere from our syllabus, remain with vital topics, but children study up to 2. Then the rest of the time, they're out there engaging in practicals, looking at how to address problems and challenges, because that is what the market needs. Mollen, I need someone out of school Who is going to make a chair for me? At whatever level. That is why we are seeing the ministry now that is looking at more of vocational training. Previously, because of the white man's brainwashing, if a person went to a technical institute, you would say he's a failure. They don't have money. Even up to now, we're in a generation that does undermine the technical part of it, the vocational studies, and children are not going there. They feel like that is for people who have lost in education or cannot take the formal education. I'm telling you, how do we address a challenge like that, that even the generation that we're telling, please adapt to this side, they refuse to do that. Yet at the end of the day, this guy, I'm just giving an example, stops at Senior 4, goes to Kabasana Technical Institute. You spend your 2 years doing HSC. He comes out with a diploma. You go to university, he goes back. As you're coming out looking for a job, the man is already working because he's addressing challenges. He's in construction. He's a successful plumber. You're there moving with the documents, calling uncles and aunties. So now government and the ministry has looked at that. And above all, they have even come up with a directorate called the Directorate of Industrial Training. What this is doing now, it is no longer promoting theory. They look at a person, if you're a mechanic, for example, this young man is assessed. Do you know what you're doing? Then they are awarded a recognized certificate. And they go to all levels up to diploma level, up to degree level, that a person may never have stepped in a formal class. But because they acquired this skill, so Ministry of Education has come up with a way where such a person can be equated and then quantified to a certain level of education. However, even with some of these initiatives you've talked about, one, we seem to be in a rush. We seem to be a rush. That is where implementation sometimes becomes a problem. You wake up one day because everyone is talking about that syllabus education system. You launch a lower secondary curriculum, which up to date even some teachers don't know what to do. Some ask you, but how is this going to be examinable? How? So there are so many initiatives that I feel need to be properly scrutinized and see how applicable they are, because we must come up with what is addressing our challenges than what is happening. And one of the things that is also most of the times disturbing is that even when we go into these new initiatives, they are not Ugandan tailor-made. You are going to hear of UNESCO. You're coming up with a syllabus. Having UNESCO, giving here guidelines, and you wonder, what is ours? Why is our agricultural element into this? You know? So our education, to be meaningful, must address problems. We must have people that come out from school and there are solutions. We had COVID-19, we are waiting for the entire world to come up with a vaccine. You know? But how many experts do we have? Professors. Very good people. Uganda has one of the learned people. If you're to look at us, Makere there, how many people that lecture? So that means that you're having an education system that cannot address the challenges. We are making flyovers here in Uganda. Go and look at this flyover. Is it called Kampala flyover from Clock Tower? Go and see how many foreigners are on that. Ethiopia Express Highway. Go and see how many are there, what Chinese or Japanese are there. Because but you have engineers, you have experts. So that shows that we must come out and see what do we need best. How do we get people there? And when you go to these people, they may not even be as qualified as the people we have here in Uganda. Yes. You look at a person who is doing a design and they're not telling you, I don't have masters plus in this field. So that is where I need to go back and analyze and then well,
we do also believe that Uganda, even at that level, can still build a robust, resilient, and of course a self-improving or adaptive system to address most of these challenges. But the question then is, how are we even putting it in these revisions for curriculum? Because we've had a system where we do have compulsory subjects that are taught right from primary level, right from the lower terms of children going to school. And that is why we have come to love them and know that they are part of the system. Now, it brings in gaps of, should most of these vocational trainings be also as compulsory as we are making these so-called white teaching subjects? Why shouldn't we have a system where we can bring in most of those technical teachings at a lower level, so that we now have a generation of children appreciating the kind of education system that is putting across, because now we are instead developing people that will be self-serving in a country. And Robert did bring out a good example of the engineering bit of it. We can have our own engineering work, groups work on some of these roads, but we don't have that. So is it just the mindset of Ugandans? And this is where I want you, Felix, to take it on. Have we gotten to that mindset change when it comes to education to at least measure up to the global level?
I like the word, and in particular you're using mindset. You see, I also don't want us to mistakenly look at this whole issue of vocation and what as a blanket. And then we are also going to, if we just jump into thinking that vocation is the solution, we are going to miss the point. Every individual uniquely has a particular point of strength. All right? And that strength doesn't necessarily have to be falling or covered within the other vocation or whatever. What we need to do, we need to make an education system that appreciates individual strengths of our children, not what is available. But some of us who have toddlers, a toddler will tell you, Daddy, I want chicken. Now, that's why we work hard. So that when that time comes and your child tells you, Daddy, I want chicken, you're not going to start making excuses. When they health benefits, no. Now, let's not force a system onto people. Let's appreciate individual strength of our children. Take time. You see, education in this country has become a process. You get like we go through a process. It is stylish. That no wonder you've seen people graduate. Every class they graduate. Baby class to baby, there's a graduation ceremony. Top class to middle, whatever. There's, because it is a process. It's an enjoyment thing. I don't know if you've seen, we have failed to have a definitive angle of education because we do not give time to understand the strength of children. That's why we are forcing them into things. You've had families say, Ewange, why not kubera okoloya? What is the relevancy of that, for example, to a family? Unless you're saying that you have a family full of criminals, then that would be understood. But if that's not the case, you say, are you having a family of epilepsy? Are you sick that you need? It is not tailored. Unless you're saying to one true that's the mischief. Let's have an education system that appreciates individual potentials of people. What am I saying? When we take children to school, how much time do these tutors, schools, do they have programs that appreciate individual merits? You talked about a very, very cynical thing that happens in school, Mollen. That thing called compulsory subjects. It is cynical. It is evil. What do you mean compulsory? Based on whose understanding? Why do you say this is compulsory? What are you looking for?
They give you general knowledge. They believe that
you must compulsory subjects in S1. I did 22 subjects in S1.
Give you a broader scope.
1, 2, 3, life. 10, 15, 18, 22. Those were compulsory subjects. Honestly, what kind of education is that? What do you mean compulsory? To who? Now, every time you make something compulsory, you are denying a child to appreciate a personal strength. Do you know that I did Islam as a compulsory subject in S1? I did Uganda as a compulsory subject in S1. And I have nothing against those two subjects. You can imagine. geography of Germany. Now I was talking about my beard. It has nothing to do with having studied this.
Yes, yes.
I did this money to Tangoni. My mind was about doing a different thing. Now, what I'm saying is that all those things denied me of my potential because the institution didn't have the capacity to look at me individually and say maybe he would make a good argument in court. Imagine if I started to be trained as a litigant in S1, something around that. Yeah. In S1, if Kirabo PB, if they gave time and saw your interest in journalism at the point of S1, and they, do you know what kind of journalism you would make at this? Like, it is not fair to think that what the people at the helm of education, or what people studied in 61, in 71, has to be the same. Man, the world has changed. Today, IT is the thing.
But again, Felix, you also look at the fact that the education system that has put across that kind of agenda is looking at the fact that you're at a tender age where you haven't even found your passion. And these are some of the subjects that shape you into,
when you
now get to pick up your interest. And that's a given. You do pick up interest at that tender age.
Let me just give you examples more than I can even give more than 20. Go to Asia. Today, the biggest innovators in technology are below the age of 16. They were, when you look at, go and read stories of the likes of the Marx. When did they start innovating? They were not fortified.
Bill Gates.
What time were they? The Steve Jobs, at what point were they starting to innovate? This has nothing to do. That thing of Geno, I don't have to be Geno. When I need a lawyer, I will call a Kirabo. When I need I need to be specific. If you need to be a Geno. Being Geno to what? It's not like I'm going to be everything in this life. Let me say this as a rejoinder to all my discussions earlier. One, let's train our children the most important values. Because values are things we trade in our daily life. One, character, honesty, and what we call intellectual honesty for that matter. Because today, every other person is a thief in Uganda. Actually, the biggest popular job for Ugandans is buffet. We have buffet in suits, in courts, in hospitals. You go to hospitals, even cry. Doctors are the biggest buffet, everyone. But let's teach our kids values, honesty, emotional intelligence. Here someone asks you a question, people are fighting almost everywhere. You saw in parliament, people are fighting the values, because those are the general things. You want to talk about general subjects. The general subject should have those things. Like if you want to talk about something that everyone can appreciate, teach them honesty, values, character, emotional intelligence. Away from those life skills, let people focus on the potentials. If someone is a good tailor, why are you forcing them to be a doctor?
Well, that also brings in the factor of adding value, like Felix is putting it clearly. But we also can give our views and bring on all these analysis. We do know that there is an implementing body, and of course this is where we also call upon the Education Commission to critically review some of the matters that can address some of these gaps that we're talking about. But also, Robert, as we move to conclude, we do know that most of these bodies or organs that the Ministry of Education has put across have not been able to put into practice even what they say would be helping the current system. I want to know, how are we addressing these gaps, and what further can ministry do to address most of these?
Well, first we had a problem the moment we commercialized our education system. Because like earlier I told you, when you look at schools in Uganda, we had missionary or religion-based schools. If you remember, the white fathers, then all that. So education. Then we had the community schools. Now what is happening is everyone can own a school. You find a Felix in Kunda waking up one day owning Felix Memorial School.
When I'm alive.
The names they are naming them are funny. Any name can work for a school, you know. So what happens is, as long as we went the excessive commercialization of education, that now we are, even when you have these good initiatives, why they're not seeing the light of day. You want a person to go through school with all these practical or vocational but the examination body does not look into them. At the end of the day, I want how many first grades I've gotten, you know? How many points, how am I ranking in the district? What is the newspaper going to portray? So even if you come up with a program that looks at mindset change, the president talks about patriotism, then you have, or even agriculture, a person is going to ask, why am I going to take children through this? Yet I know my niche is, how many first grades have I gotten? That a person will ask, so commercialization of education in Uganda has gotten to a level. In parliament yesterday, we had Honorable Hamson Mobua saying, but wait, school term is opening, but these guys are hiking fees like nothing. Can't we do anything about this?
Also those ones.
Can't we do anything about this? Because people are no longer looking at education, that let's educate a useful person in this nation. They're now looking at education as one of the businesses. So even when the ministry comes up with some of these initiatives, a school proprietor, a headmaster may not take them as important. Because at the end of the day, it is not the quality of a person you've gotten. It is the marks. That's why you have lawyers that go and steal 10-point-something billion. They don't have integrity. Because that's why you have doctors that will let someone, a mother who has come to give birth, die because school was all about passing, and passing. Not about what are we instilling, what are you able to do. So commercialization, excessive commercialization, may not allow some of the policies that the ministry is coming up with, because it doesn't. Most of the schools in Uganda are not government schools. They are private schools. So what extent can you hold someone accountable or enforce certain things?
Yes, and of course the message is clear. We do want an education system that will of course address the fact that we need value, we need socio-economic development, and the professionals that we are giving out or producing as a country, bringing on that, are we aiming at developing the country? That is still the question over this discussion, and of course most of these views that we have been giving out. We do hope that ministry as well takes on its mantle to implement some of those policy and review what can be done to ensure economic development. Of course, we are continuing most of these discussions online, and you can get us on social media. The hashtag is UBCGMU, and of course we are on Twitter at UBC TV Uganda. We're also streaming live on YouTube, that is UBC Television Uganda. Now we'll be taking you through some of the stories across the newspapers for this morning. Later than that, we'll also be taking you to the roads and of course giving you the weather update. We'll also be having sports highlights in there, and of course after that we will be looking into Good Morning Uganda agenda, after which we will be going for Good Morning Uganda Extra. Let's take a break. We'll be back with what is in the newspapers.
Pick of the day on UBC. Was brought to you by
Simply make a small deposit of 99k and pay the balance mpola. You can pay in daily, weekly or even monthly installments while you enjoy your new phone. So what are you doing today? Visit any MTN shop near you and get the MTN cupboard. That's super easy.
The Tales of Kasozi, brought to you by Uganda Communications Commission.
Hello? This is Kasozi. How can I help you?
Hey, Kasozi, my brother. Long time. We last met when we were at campus. It's been a while, but you are the person I'm looking for.
Campus? Really?
Hey, you don't remember me?
Okay, so how can I help you?
I'm stuck in Gulu making millions, and I need to urgently send money to my sick mother. But I can't find any mobile money agent near me. I've sent the money to your phone, as you can see the message. It might take a few minutes to come through, but I urgently need you to send the money to my mother. Let me send you her number, and you send it to her chap.
My friend, I'm afraid your mom is going to die.
What?
Because I don't know you, I never went to campus, and I'm also in Gulu. So can we meet at CPS, we talk about it?
Stay tuned for what Kasozi does next.
Tofera. Refrain from unnecessary engagements with strangers over the phone.
This message is powered by the Uganda Communications Commission.
Forget last season. Forget the oohs and the ahs. Forget every moment that stole the show, because the real show is here on GoTV. It's the new season. It's action-packed, and it's going to be non-stop football. With over 1,000 games from more than 7 leagues and cup competitions, plus a World Cup. Make sure you get the best seat in the house this new football season. Get a GoCoder with 1 month of GoTV value for only 25,000 Uganda shillings and enjoy non-stop football. GoTV Uganda. Love it.
One-on-one with Michael Jordan Lukomwa.
A weekly face-to-face conversation focusing on accountability, inspiration, information, and sensitization of the public from the various sources, such as inspirational profiles.
Having a disability is not inability.
Professional guidance.
There is no special antiretroviral therapy that is given specifically for discordant couples.
And of course, politics.
Don't you see anywhere that you would give a credit in the fight against COVID?
My role as the owner of the country is not to, be preoccupied by giving credit to my servant.
We have said that if we are to talk to General Museveni, there must be certain conditions in place.
Is it true that you paid 5 million shillings to MPs that voted for Anita Monga and Tayebo?
That is laughable. Why would we pay when we have nominated them as SEC?
Every party has been represented in Uganda's parliament for 10 years. We only by one MP. You yourself and my daughter, Susan.
Every Friday 9 p.m. it's one-on-one with Michael Jordan Lukomwa on UBC TV, inspiring Uganda.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda.
Well, big headlines, a lot of stories on what is happening across the country and beyond. And of course, it is time now to look at what is happening within the newspapers. I have the New Vision. Felix does have the Daily Monitor. Felix, start us off. What do we have in the Daily Monitor for this morning?
Well, of course, in the big headline, Museveni wants action against airport officials. Now, he does say, I need answers now. President writes to Works and Transport Minister General Katumba Wamala demanding for action against Uganda Civil Aviation Authority. Officials responsible for what he was briefed on to be less than satisfactory safety measures at Entebbe International Airport. Well, of course, still in the headlines, hundreds eulogize ex-minister Ario, and NEMA evicts more Lubiji wetland encroaches. But definitely also in the DM today, love overcomes cultural and religious differences. Now still in headlines, Mugarura, a conman who targets big shots and hackers disable National Water and Sewage Corporation IT system. Ruto was duly elected, IEBC chief tells courts. Still in the Daily Monitor, hundreds did eulogize ex-minister Ario. And today in history, Amin announces probe over hire of Kenyan cars. And the Great Moon Hoax is published in the New York Sun.
Well, and crossing over into the New Vision, over 1,000 Cheyo workers face deportation, and that is a story on page 5 of the New Vision. Also looking at the big headline right there, 8,000 parishes get parish development model cash. Of course, with shillings 208 billion released for poverty eradication program. That story is on page 3 of the New Vision for this morning. Also, they give you a big picture right there. Encroachers evicted, police and UPDF officers interrogating suspected wetland encroachers at Busega. That is also a story in the New Vision for this morning. UNRA to build 22 new roads, 6 bridges. That is on page 8. And of course, Asian expansion in the eyes of Mayar Madhavin. They are giving you that story. That is on page 26 and 27. Minister's car impounded in the EPS operations, and in transport, ex-Uganda airline boss quizzed over losses. That is a story on page 7 of this morning's New Vision. Now, crossing over to the second page, 275 youth get skills in occupational standards. They give you a picture right there on some of the certificates being awarded. Now, today in history, they take you back in 2000, where Museveni swears Muhoozi in. And of course, back in 2000 as well, Liberia frees scribes. That is also right there for you in today's New Vision. Blessing of twins. More of that story on the second page.
Now in sports, She Corporate 1 short away and Cranes put final pieces together. But also in boxing, bold statement that is undisputed super middleweight champion Sanelo Alvarez says he wants to send Gennady Golovkin into retirement. Now still in sports, Odoch talking revamp after Express get boost and women football attracts converted Japan opening. But of course also in the UYFA Under 13 Soccer Championship, the teams there that were able to go through, they give them to you inside the papers.
And crossing over onto the New Vision, sport infrastructure is our priority. Of course, Peter Ogwang wants infrastructure development to be prioritized during his tenure. And of course, that's the newly appointed State Sports Minister, Peter Ogwang, making a promise to address as he begins life in his new dockets. That is a story in the New Vision Sport. Corporate Storm final, the CAF Women Champion League TECAFA Zonal qualifiers and semi-finals, of course, with She Corporates starting off with quite a good start. And of course, there is more on that, where they are headed. What is at stake? The winners will walk away with $30,000 US, while runner-ups as a third place will each receive $20,000 US. And of course, that is all still up for grabs for the She Corporates. Inside the New Vision Sport, headed for Dubai Sevens. Of course, that is also a detailed story, as Uganda is going for Dubai, and that is also going down for the Cape Sevens.
In the Daily Nation, we'll be looking at that is corporate demands increase of school fees, but also in the big headline going for that is the last of the Mois. That is basically what's in the big headlines there in the Kenyan press. But for major stories there in the same papers, they do talk about the role of the IEBC tables results are forms to counter rigging claims in the case before the court now, but also governors-elect take over in countrywide swearing in.
Well, you also look at the fact that Felix, IEBC is now bringing in details saying that, you know, this is what we have. And of course, they are pinpointing the fact that the Kenya's Independent Electoral and Boundary Commission has submitted to Supreme Court the documents used to declare results, and the forms were used to declare results at polling stations that they are taking to judgment. Now, Supreme Court has until 5th to declare a petition. How do you think this is going to turn out, really?
Definitely, as I always say, there's going to be a lot of jurisprudence formed. We're looking at lots of precedents in this particular one because the happenings and the events are one of a time that we didn't see in this particular election. But majorly, the focus should be on the people, and that has been quite allowed in the demands of every other Kenyan in this particular case. But the biggest challenge for these people as they go to court is, where does this leave the stability of Kenya in terms of social, economic, political, religious, and tribal? That's the big question.
Yeah, it is. And of course, we also want to ensure that there is peace in Kenya, because we do relate to them, especially when it comes to our importation of most of the valuable goods around here. Well, we also want to take you through the traffic updates and hitting the roads. We want to start off with the Kampala Northern Bypass. Now, if you're leaving the Kampala Northern Bypass headed towards town, what can you expect? Well, we'll be taking it off from the Bwaise roundabout right there as you head towards Bombo Road, or even taking the Sapo Lukagwa Road Road. What we're looking at this morning is at least across the northern bypass, it is quite clear. The traffic is okay, it's moving. But again, down at the roundabout, that is where there is a little bit of traffic. If you're coming from Bombo Road towards that YSA roundabout, there is a little bit of traffic coming through right from Bombo Road towards the roundabout. But again, if you're leaving the roundabout using Bombo Road, it looks like that road is quite clear. It is little traffic over there. And again, if you're going to be using Sapolo Kagwa Road, it looks like there is a little bit of traffic building up. Even for those leaving town and those coming towards town, there's a little bit of traffic. So if you have to choose between those two roads, it looks like the road that is taking the upper side, the Bombo Road, will actually be more clearer for you. But again, looking more into the Sapolo Kagwa Road, also the traffic has built up just as you head into the road. But again, towards Makere Road, that looks like it's quite clear. There's just a few traffic zones that are building up as those interconnections that are joined into the road. But also looking at the major Bombo Road from the Kampala Northern Bypass, looks like it goes clear all the way as you head into town. That is still a clear road. But again, as you look at the Mulago roundabout, that is where the traffic now starts to build up. For those cars that are just entering the roundabout, looks like the traffic is clear. But again, if you're leaving the roundabout towards some of these intersections that leave that roundabout, that is where the traffic now starts to build up. If you are taking the Binaisa Road, it looks like that is having a little bit of traffic all the way, and that could actually delay your movements. But also, still, if you're to continue with the main Bombo Road, still heading to town, it looks like there is a little bit of traffic just after the roundabout towards the Wandegea side, but also that does clear as you head over towards the Makere side. That traffic also starts to clear up. Now we have more traffic that starts to build up if you're headed into town, and of course that also does add to the fact that you now have a lot of cars that are coming in from most of these interjections right from the Musa Kalule Road. Also that is traffic that adds on. But also you look at the upper roads that you could still use if you're headed into town. You have the Nakasero Hill Road, which looks like it's also building up in terms of traffic right in orange lines there. But again, also for the cars that are leaving town, there's going to be a little bit of traffic over there. And of course, you have more traffic that is building up if you're headed towards the Vinaisa Road, also using the Downer Road, which is the Yusufure Road. That is also building up with traffic, especially for those cars that are joining onto the roundabout, leaving town using that. But again, if you're just from the Vinaisa Road headed to Yusufure, that is using the Murago roundabout, looks like that is quite some clear traffic for you right there in green lines, and that could actually help you reduce on the traffic that could be on the Bombo Road down the side. Looks like that road is quite clear. You can use that, and of course that will be taking you all the way towards town. Looks like it also goes on with clear, just a little bit of traffic, and of course that also adds to the interjections over there, but most of that does clear up, and I don't think it will be taking much more time. Now also heading over, you look at down to the golf club side. Also there is a little bit of traffic that builds in towards the interjection where we have the traffic lights right there, but again it's just a short distance just at the traffic lights. But you look at that road also being clear as you move forward. Now if you're coming from the Kololo side, there's a little bit of traffic that does build up towards that area, towards the traffic lights, but again it's also just a small distance right over there. It clears as you join in with Yusufule Road. Now if you're heading to upper side of town, you look at the Shimoni Road, also quite a bit of clear traffic over there that you can use if you are heading to the upper side. But again, continuing with Yusufure, it looks like it is clear all the way joining to Ginger Road. Now if you're joining Ginger Road, that's a roundabout towards Nile Avenue, and also continuing to Yusufure, it's a bit of traffic just at the roundabout, but otherwise that road seems quite clear joining into Ginger Road. Now a little bit of traffic building up with just those orange lines as you head into Ginger Road. That is where we have some traffic building up, and of course that continues to join into Kampala Road, where we're seeing the cars coming into town, a bit of clear traffic, but those leaving town seem to be having to deal with most of that traffic that is starting to build up across Kampala Road. And of course that is one you should be aware of and prepare for. Now also for those joining in right at Ginger Road, joining to to that side, as you head towards the Leyre side, there seems to be a little bit of traffic, but also you do have some of the roads that are joining in, likes of Entebbe Road, that brings in a little bit of traffic, but otherwise it doesn't look like much traffic to also hold you up for a while. Well, away from that, we also want to take you through some of the weather updates for this morning, and we'll be tapping in satellites for this morning, looking at what is happening, what the situation is like across the country. And of course, we are starting off with mostly sunny conditions across the country, right? Open skies across most areas. We do look at the northern area actually starting up with mostly a sunny morning, and of course, warming up swiftly. It looks like the eastern part of the country as well. Right, in those dark colors of blue, we're looking at a sunny day. But again, we do have some clouds that are starting to build up towards midwestern Uganda. You also look at the central side of the country, Kampala as well, having intervals of cloudy conditions, but it looks like it is a sunny morning across most of the areas. I look at Jinja as well, Tororo. We do have just a few mixtures of clouds, but again, it is likely to be mostly that kind of weather throughout the morning. The western side as well, starting off with quite clear skies, looking like it is going to be pleasant weather. We do have mostly forecasts of sunny intervals across most areas. Now it looks like we could be looking at quite a warm morning, and of course with most areas in the country expected to continue with those intervals of sunny and cloudy conditions. Now we're starting to warm up. We have looked at mostly dry weather, especially for the northern part of the country. We also look at the eastern side that has been having a little bit of rains, but looks like we have quite a reduction for this morning, and a lot more for this day. Looks like we might be dealing with the sunny intervals. We do also look at some of those systems that start to build up across Lake Victoria, but again, those are just over the islands of Lake Victoria. That is where we do expect some rains to come through, and maybe later in the afternoon, as we're seeing most of those systems that do develop due to the local effects could be coming through. And of course, talking about mostly the southern sector, that is where we do expect to start off with most of those sunny intervals, but those will be developing into rains later in the afternoon. We also look at the western side of the country. We're starting off with sunny intervals, but again, some of those systems that do develop from the Congo side might also be bringing in a little bit of rains, but that will be later in the day. But for now, it looks like the weather is quite clear, and we could be looking at more of the temperatures warming up, and of course mid-20s for the downer side of the country, that is the southern sector. We're looking at highs of 26 and 27. Back to the northern side, it looks like it's going to be warm a bit, starting off with at least the upper 20s, and we could be rising up to 30s actually by afternoon. Could also be looking at temperatures going into the upper 20s for Kampala, and of course most areas around Lake Victoria. But again, you also look into the fact that we are developing the seasonal forecast that is soon coming up, but as well, this is a time that farmers should be preparing, not in a rush to start planting, because the rainy season has not been established. The rains here and there are just, onset rains or early signs of the onset, but the season is not yet defined, and not enough rains to actually start planting. You can hold up on that while you do prepare your gardens to look forward to the seasonal rains that will be coming through. But of course, we'll be giving you most of those updates, and of course the summary of that forecast as it does come through. Well, that is it in terms of weather for this morning, and of course after this we'll be going in for Good Morning Uganda agenda. We'll take a short break. When we come back, we'll be giving you more on that.
This is Good Morning Uganda.
I remember the lockdown, when the streets were empty and our lives disrupted, when businesses closed and our livelihoods hung in the balance. Hospitals were full. We lost loved ones, jobs, and hope.
our children couldn't study anymore. We cannot let this happen again. We should not go back. Get fully vaccinated against COVID-19 and join the millions of Ugandans who are already vaccinated.
Forget last season. Forget the oohs and the ahs. Forget every moment that stole the show, because the real show is here on GoTV. It's the new season. It's action-packed and it's going to be non-stop football. With over 1,000 games from more than 7 leagues and cup competitions plus a World Cup. Make sure you get the best seat in the house this new football season. Get a GoCoder with 1 month of GoTV value for only 25,000 Uganda shillings and enjoy non-stop football. GoTV Uganda. Love it.
Pick of the day on UBC.
Was brought to you by
Simply make a small deposit of 99k and pay the balance mpola. You can pay in daily, weekly or even monthly installments while you enjoy your new phone. So what are you doing today? Visit any MTN shop near you and get the MTN cupboard super easy.